You ever stop to wonder why that seemingly simple product on the shelf costs what it does? It's
Mm.
definitely more than just the price of the raw materials, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Hidden beneath that sticker is this fascinating story of how businesses manage what they have and what it costs just to keep the lights on.
Yeah,
Today, we're going to try and pull back that curtain a bit.
exactly.
Yeah.
This deep dive is all about how businesses get a handle on their inventory,
Yeah.
all the stuff they need to operate, and their overhead costs.
Those essential but often kind of invisible expenses.
Right. Think of it as unlocking the secrets to how a business stays efficient and profitable.
And we're using a pretty comprehensive learning unit as our roadmap today. It's guiding us through, well, everything from the basic idea of inventory
Hmm.
to some really sophisticated ways of figuring out its value, keeping costs under control, and understanding where all that overhead money actually goes.
It covers a lot of ground.
It really does. Our goal. To give you the crucial insights so you can really understand what makes up the price of the goods and services you encounter every day.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's dive right in.
Inventory, it's not just stuff gathering dust in a warehouse, is it?
No, not at
Right.
all. I mean, for a business that just buys and sells goods, inventory is pretty straightforward. It's what they purchase hoping to sell for a profit. Simple.
Okay.
But for manufacturers, it's more like a three-stage journey.
3 stages.
Yeah. First, you have the raw materials, the fundamental ingredients. Think about like a furniture maker needing wood or maybe a baker stocking up on flour.
Right. The basic building blocks. Got it. What comes next?
Then you have work in process, or WIP, some people call it.
WIP. Okay.
This is where those raw materials have actually entered the production line. Some effort's been put in, maybe some other costs added, but the product isn't finished yet. It's in that kind of in-between stage.
Halfway there.
Sort of. And finally, you have finished goods, the final product, all ready to be shipped out and sold. Okay, so a manufacturer has raw materials, then they become partly made things, WIP, and then they're ready to go as finished goods.
You got it.
Now, businesses obviously need enough of all this stuff to keep operating, which brings us to this idea of inventory piling. It sounds almost like a squirrel getting ready for winter.
That's actually a great analogy. Inventory piling is essentially accumulating the necessary stock to keep things running smoothly.
Right.
Think back to our furniture maker. They don't just need wood. They need screws, varnish, fabric,
Right.
a whole range of items. When they place an order for a significant quantity of wood, anticipating future production needs, that's inventory piling in action.
But the big question is why? Why not just order things exactly when needed, just in time?
Yeah, exactly. Why have these piles at all?
It seems less efficient somehow.
Well, the number one reason usually is to avoid stockouts.
Stockouts, running out of stuff.
Exactly. Imagine that furniture maker running out of wood mid-production. The whole process just grinds to a halt.
Do that.
Yeah, and they can't fulfill orders, which leads to unhappy customers. It's a big problem.
Okay, avoiding stockouts is key. Are there other reasons?
Oh, sure. There are other strategic reasons, too. Sometimes a business might anticipate a price increase in raw materials. So they buy more now to save money later. That's speculation, basically.
Betting on the price.
Right. Or maybe if they foresee potential disruptions in their supply chain, maybe due to geopolitical events or supplier issues, weather.
Yeah, lots of things can happen.
For sure. So they might build up a larger inventory just as a safety measure.
So the piles aren't just random heaps then. They actually serve different purposes.
Precisely. We have what's called normal stock, which is just the inventory moving through the regular production cycle, just received, being worked on, or recently completed.
Standard stuff.
Then there's buffer stock. This acts as a cushion to handle mismatches between, say, a steady production rate and a less predictable supply, like imported components with long lead times.
Gotcha. A buffer.
Then safety stock is an even more substantial buffer. It's specifically there to protect against unexpected delays in deliveries or like sudden spikes in customer demand.
Extra protection.
Yep. Speculative stock, like we said, is more for financial gain, betting on future price changes.
Right.
Stock in transit is inventory that's been ordered and paid for, but hasn't actually arrived at the warehouse yet. It's kind of in limbo.
Still counts, though.
Oh, yeah. And of course, you can also have the less desirable categories. Overstocking, which ties up capital and space unnecessarily.
Too much stuff.
And understocking, which carries that high risk of stockouts we talked about.
Not enough stuff. A balancing act.
It really is.
And then there are these formulas I saw for average stock. What's the point of calculating an average?
Well, average stock tries to give you a rough idea, just a ballpark figure, of the typical level of inventory a business holds over a period.
How do they figure that out?
One common way is just beginning inventory plus ending inventory divided by 2. Simple average. Another way is roughly half of your usual order size plus your safety stock. But you have to keep in mind, though, these are definitely simplifications because inventory levels are constantly fluctuating, up and down. A perfectly accurate average is actually really hard to pin down.
Just an estimate, then.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Then you also have maximum stock, which is just the highest amount a business might hold, often limited by storage capacity, or maybe it happens because of an unusually large or early delivery.
Right. So managing all this inventory clearly has a cost beyond just the money tied up in the stuff itself.
Absolutely.
And for a manufacturer, figuring out exactly how much the materials they use cost, that seems like a fundamental challenge, especially if they're using lots of different things.
It's absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
Knowing the accurate cost of direct materials is like a cornerstone of good financial management for manufacturers.
I bet.
If you're a small operation using easily traceable materials, it might be relatively straightforward. But think about that bakery again.
Okay, the flour.
Yeah. They buy sacks of flour, they pour them into these large bins, and they're constantly mixing new deliveries with the existing stock. Trying to track the exact cost of the flour that goes into each specific loaf, that becomes incredibly complex for the cost accountant.
So how do they even begin to solve that puzzle then? It sounds impossible.
Well, this is where inventory valuation methods come into play.
Valuation methods, okay.
In South Africa, the learning unit we looked at highlights 2 main ways businesses assign a cost to their inventory. FIFO, which stands for first in, first out,
FIFO? Heard of that one?
and the weighted average cost method. Now, these aren't about physically tracking every single grain of flour, obviously.
No.
They're about making logical assumptions about which units, which batches are being used or sold.
Okay, so FIFO, first in, first out. That sounds intuitive. You assume the oldest stuff is used or sold first.
Exactly. The underlying assumption is that the units purchased earliest are the first ones to leave the inventory, either sold to customers or used in production.
Makes sense.
And a key implication of this method is that the inventory remaining at the end of an accounting period, your closing inventory, is more likely to be made up of the most recently purchased items.
Ah, so it reflects more current prices?
Precisely. And this can be particularly relevant in industries dealing with, say, perishable goods, where you naturally want to move the oldest items first anyway.
Right, like milk or produce. Okay, so that's FIFO. What about weighted average? Is that more about smoothing out the cost?
Exactly, you got it. With the weighted average method, instead of tracking individual purchase costs like FIFO tries to approximate, you calculate an average cost after each new purchase.
After every purchase.
Well, after every purchase at a different price. So if you buy the same item multiple times at different prices, you add the cost of the new purchase to the cost of the inventory you already have, and then you divide by the total number of units you now have.
Okay, so it recalculates the average.
Right. And this new weighted average cost then becomes the value you use for any unit sold or used, until the next purchase at a different price comes along and triggers another recalculation.
So it kind of evens out the ups and downs in price.
It does, yeah. It smooths out those fluctuations.
Now, the learning unit made a point of saying that inventory valuation methods are different from inventory systems. That sounds like a subtle distinction, but maybe an important one.
Oh, it's a critical difference. Absolutely. Think of it this way. Inventory valuation methods, like FIFO and weighted average, are the rules you use to determine the cost of your inventory. How much is it worth?
Okay, valuation LO costs money.
Right. Inventory systems like perpetual and periodic are the methods you use to track the quantity of your inventory on hand. They answer the question of how often and how precisely you're updating your records about how much stuff you have.
Got it. So valuation is about the money, and the system is about the numbers, the count. Tell me more about these systems. Perpetual sounds like it's, well, perpetually running.
That's the core idea. A perpetual inventory system means you're continuously updating your inventory records, pretty much in real time.
How does that work?
Every time you buy inventory, the inventory count in your books is immediately increased, debited. Every time you sell or use inventory, the inventory count is decreased, credited, and the cost is moved over to the cost of goods sold account.
Instantly.
Pretty much. This system allows businesses to have a running total of their inventory levels and cost at any point, theoretically, without needing to do a physical count all the time. Often this is managed electronically using inventory software, or sometimes manually with detailed inventory cards or stock records.
Like a constantly updated digital shopping cart.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. As items are added or removed, the record updates.
Okay, so you always know what you should have. Periodic, then, sounds like you just check up on it every now and then.
Exactly. Spot on. With a periodic inventory system, you don't continuously track inventory levels in the main inventory account during the period.
No running total.
Nope. Instead, you physically count your inventory at the end of a specific period, say monthly or quarterly.
A big count.
Yep. During the period, when you buy inventory, it's recorded in a separate purchases account, not directly into the inventory account itself.
Okay.
The cost of goods sold is only determined at the end of the period after that physical count has been done. Basically, you know what you started with, you know what you bought during the period, and then you count what you have left.
And the difference must be what you sold or used.
Exactly. It's more like taking a manual count of everything in a small shop at the end of the day to see what's missing.
So perpetual is always on, giving you that up-to-date info, while periodic is like taking a snapshot at specific intervals. Okay, that makes the difference much clearer now.
Good.
And the learning unit had some examples, right? To really drive this home, showing FIFO and weighted average under both systems.
Yes. Examples 5.1 and 5.2 were designed specifically to illustrate just that. They use the exact same purchase and sale transactions for two fictional companies, Kendrakis Enterprises, using a perpetual system,
Perpetual, always on,
and Kerr Ltd., using a periodic system.
periodic, snapshot at the end.
Right. And by applying both FIFO and weighted average valuation under each of those systems, you could clearly see how the reported figures for ending inventory, cost of sales, and ultimately gross profit can differ, sometimes significantly.
Wow, so the choices really matter.
Oh, definitely. It highlights that the choice of both the valuation method and the inventory system has a tangible impact on a company's financial statements. They even had that little note reminding us to strip out an initial 20% markup on the opening inventory in the example, just to focus purely on the core cost calculations.
Right, keep it simple. It sounds like those examples are pretty key to really understanding the practical implications.
They really help solidify it.
And then there were those self-check questions I saw. Question 5.1 was about the difference between the systems and methods, and then 5.2 and 5.3 were more hands-on practice.
Good for testing your understanding.
Okay, so moving beyond just the initial purchase price, the learning unit really stressed the real cost of inventory. It's definitely more than just what you pay the supplier, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That's a common pitfall for businesses, just focusing on the supplier's invoice when making pricing and profitability decisions.
Easy mistake to make, I guess.
It is. The real cost of inventory actually encompasses all the expenses associated with getting that inventory ready for sale and keeping it available. This includes the initial acquisition cost, sure, but also the costs of storing it, managing it, everything.
Okay, so break down these real costs for us. What categories are we talking about here?
Well, first are the purchasing costs. This is the most obvious one, the price you pay your suppliers.
The invoice price.
Right. But it also includes any directly related costs like freight, insurance during transit, import duties, anything you incur to get the goods to your location and in a sellable condition.
Okay.
And factors like bulk discounts you might get or the terms of your credit agreements with suppliers can also significantly affect these costs.
Makes sense. What's next?
Then we have ordering costs. These are all the expenses involved in actually placing and receiving an order.
Like the admin work.
Exactly. The administrative costs of preparing and issuing purchase orders, maybe the cost of getting purchase approval, the labor costs for receiving and inspecting the delivery when it arrives, and the expense of processing the supplier's invoice and making the payment. It all adds up.
Okay, purchasing costs, ordering costs.
Okay.
What else contributes to this real cost?
Next are the stockout costs. These are the often overlooked costs you incur when you run out of an item that customers actually want.
Ah, the cost of not having it.
Precisely. If it's a critical component for production, it can halt your entire operation. That's huge.
Yeah.
If it's a product you sell, you might have to rush order it at a higher price, incurring extra shipping fees just to satisfy the customer.
Expensive solution.
Or even worse, you could just lose the sale altogether. And it's not just that immediate revenue you lose.
It's future business too.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
You could lose potential future business from that customer, and it can damage your reputation. This lost potential profit is what we call an opportunity cost.
Ouch. Those stockout costs sound like they can really add up quickly.
They certainly can. And finally, we have quality costs.
Quality costs. Like fixing broken stuff?
It includes that, but it's broader. These are all the costs associated with ensuring that your inventory meets certain quality standards.
Hmm.
And interestingly, these costs aren't just about fixing defects. They include the costs of preventing defects in the first place.
Proactive costs.
Exactly. There are generally four main categories here. Prevention costs, things like employee training, quality planning, preventative maintenance.
Stopping problems before they start.
Right. Then appraisal costs the cost of inspecting and testing your inventory to ensure it meets standards. Audits, quality checks.
Checking the quality.
Then internal failure costs. These happen when defects are found before the product reaches the customer. Think cost of rework, scrapped items, lost production time.
Catching mistakes inside.
And lastly, external failure costs. These are the costs when defects are found after the customer receives the product. Things like warranty repairs, handling returns, managing customer complaints.
Mistakes that get out. Those sound particularly painful.
They can be very damaging, yeah, both financially and to your reputation.
Wow. Okay, so when a business is thinking about the cost of keeping something in stock, they're looking at a whole lot more than just the initial invoice. Purchasing, ordering, stockouts, quality, it's complex.
It really is a multifaceted cost.